Welcome everyone to our first video on market failures. In this market failures feature, we're going to focus on price ceilings and price floors, as in market failures created by government action. This first video is going to have a lot of explanation in it, so make sure you're paying attention trying to understand this. There are a lot of things that can get you a little distracted and confused going one way or the other. It would be a lot better if we were in person or if you were at the Zoom meeting to ask questions and give replies. But here we are, so make sure you're trying to focus on this one and understand where we're going. So what we're covering here first is how markets work. The first thing I need to share with you guys is essentially some of the graphing concepts for how markets work. Now, you guys are familiar with our PQSD, our price, quantity, and supply and demand. What you notice is I've colored in these areas. What they represent is a concept called consumer and producer surplus. What consumer and producer surplus is it's the additional benefit people get from when they, consumer surplus, when they buy or sell things at the set price. So here's how it works. If the equilibrium price was right here, let's say it was $5. So that means people are buying this good for $5. Now, some people think of it was like a hamburger, okay? The market price is $5. That means you go to it, no matter how much you value it, if you want to buy it, $5. Now, some people might be willing to pay like $8 for a hamburger. Well, the good news for them is they only have to pay the equilibrium price of $5. So they would have paid $8, but they're getting it for $5. So this extra area right here represents what we call the consumer surplus. They're getting $8 of value for only $5. They get $3 of surplus. Now, some people might only be willing to pay up to $7. So they'll pay $7, or they'll pay $5, but they get $7 of benefits. So they get $2 surplus. Some people might want to pay $6, but they only have to pay $5, and they get that benefit all the way to equilibrium. Now, let's say you only wanted to pay $4. The most you would ever pay for a hamburger is $4 down here. Well, the price is $5, so obviously you don't buy it, and that's why this area is not filled in, because that purchase never happened. So that's called consumer surplus, and economists like consumer surplus because it means people are getting more benefit than what they're actually giving up to get it. And that's usually how you buy things. A lot of things you buy, you might be willing to pay a higher price for, but you don't have to. So you get more benefit than what you actually paid. All right. Now remember, we're not asking, hey, how much do you want to pay for something? We'd all like to pay the lowest price possible, but it's how much would you pay? For example, if gasoline was $5 a gallon, you'd still buy it. So that'd be $5 a gallon. You wouldn't be happy, but you still would. Luckily for you guys right now, it's about $1.67 a gallon. So you're getting a lot of surplus from that purchase. So that's what we mean by what the market price is and what you'd be willing to spend. Okay, on the other hand, we have something called producer surplus, and that's in this kind of red triangle here. Some people, let's go back to hamburgers. Some people would be willing to make and sell you a hamburger for $1, but the market says the prices are $5. So they'd be willing to sell it for $1, but they get $5 for it. So they get $4 of extra benefit. Some people might be willing to make a burger and sell it to you for $2, but they still get $5. You get $3 of benefit. Some maybe make it for $3, but they get $5. Some for $4, but they still get $5, so they get an extra dollar benefit. And then some would be willing to make it for $5 and sell it to you for $5, and they get $5. So they're back at that equilibrium right here. So this is what we call producer surplus. It's the extra benefit producers get when they sell a good at the market price. Now, some producers might be willing to accept the lowest price of $6, but if they're only going to get $5, then they simply don't make that hamburger. Okay, so we have producer surplus and we have consumer surplus. What you want to know is economists want all of this surplus here filled in. They don't really care who gets more of the surplus. So if producers get more or consumers get more, economists are okay with that because economists don't pick favorites. They just care about how the market and how beneficial it is. So in this market, at equilibrium, all the surplus is filled in. Economists will call this efficient. What we're going to learn about is market failures, we're going to take this concept and people will make it inefficient. And that's what we're getting to first. So the first thing we're going to cover is something called price ceilings. So already you should have your name, period, and date filled in. That's very important. But we're covering price ceilings. And remember, you have 2 blanks there. So if you run out of room in this blank, you can always bop down to this spot here. Okay, what is a price ceiling? Well, a price ceiling is a legal maximum price that can be charged for a good. So this is when the government steps in and says, here's the absolute maximum of price. They create a ceiling. Now, this is where a lot of you guys get confused, is when I say ceiling. Remember, a legal maximum price that can be charged for something is an upper limit. You can't go above it because it stops you. You can sell anything below it, but it's a top limit. So to see what that looks like on a graph, it does something pretty important. A lot of you guys want to go ahead and graph a ceiling up here, but that's going to be incorrect. Because if our market price is here and that's our limit, well, it doesn't matter to us because the price is already here. We can't go above this, but we wouldn't in a normal market. It's kind of like the ceiling in your house right now. You don't notice it there because it's way above and not interfering you. Bring that ceiling below your equilibrium, like where your head would be, like if we put your ceiling only 4 feet off the ground, it would keep you down. So an effective price ceiling really goes to right here. It's going to be below equilibrium. That means the market wants to bring the price up here, but they're limited right here at the price ceiling. Price ceilings, remember, a ceiling stops you from going up. You hear about a glass ceiling? It stops people from going through it, okay? So you can't go higher, it stops you. So ceilings keep you down. A price floor, on the other time, will bring you up, and that is when you would see our price floor going up here. But we'll get to that on the next lesson. So ceilings, effective ceilings keep you down, effective price floors bring you up. Think what would happen if you remove the floor under you right now. You would fall down. So floors bring you up, ceilings keep you down. So it's a little inverse. You got to think about what a ceiling does, not ceiling up, floor down. No. Floors, what do? They bring you up. What do ceilings do? They keep you down. If you remember what a ceiling does and what a floor does, you'll understand this concept a lot better. So we've already covered a price ceiling is a legal maximum price that can be charged for a good. Okay, so if I lower the maximum price, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to make the good cheaper for consumers. What that means is by setting a price ceiling, a government would be saying you can't charge above a certain amount. So an effective price ceiling would bring the price down. Now you guys have seen price ceilings and you've probably even heard about some price ceilings now. Now, it happens in a few places. The first one, and main one we're going to be covering today, is a price ceiling that limits how high you can raise prices on rents in big cities, with what we call here rent controls or rent in big cities. You can think of cities like New York in the 80s and early 90s, or even the 70s. Rent was really, really high. For example, a 1-bedroom apartment in North Tampa would probably set you back around $1,000, maybe a little bit more, depending how nice it is. So let's say a 900 square foot apartment, 1-bedroom, Tampa, $1,000. If you wanted that same apartment, but you put it in New York City, like in Manhattan, that would go ahead and change the price a lot. That would be like $4,000, maybe even $5,000 a month. So giving you a per year thing in Tampa, it would cost you $12,000 to have an apartment and place to live. But in New York, it would be $48,000 a year. That's really, really expensive. So to be able to afford that, you'd have to earn close to $150,000 a year. That's like $75 an hour to afford your own 1-bedroom apartment. It's pretty crazy. Now, so that's one thing where we said they had a price ceiling. Another example is what we call price gouging laws. Price gouging laws are laws put in place during emergencies like hurricanes, or even now with the pandemic, limiting how much a producer can charge for its good. So we have price gouging laws, and then we have rent controls in big cities up here. So when we say what problem is the government trying to solve, you should be able to figure out what the answer is between these two boxes. Remember, if you fill this one up, you can always put your answer in the second box below it. So the problem the government's trying to solve here is they're trying to make goods more affordable for consumers. So by lowering the price, I should make things more affordable. Think, if you need to pay $48,000 to live somewhere, I might, as a politician, feel that that price is too high and want it to be lowered so that people who make a certain amount of money can afford to live there, that they won't get priced out and be forced to move because they can't afford rents. So they're trying to make goods more affordable for consumers. Okay, now we need to kind of get into some story time, because telling you guys the narrative about this will really answer number 5 and 6 and 7 much easier. So what we can do is look back to New York City in the 80s and 90s. They had rent controls on a lot of apartments. What a rent control is it's basically the government stopping rents from going up, which means it's in effect keeping prices down. So the first thing that's going to happen when we have rent controls is we can go ahead and look at what that looks like on a graph. So on a rent control, we can go ahead and show that this will be our new equilibrium. We take our price ceiling. Remember, we're at equilibrium and we bring it down to, let's just put it here. And that would go ahead and lower our quantity. We go from our QE here to QE2. And to give you guys kind of a more numerical perspective here, it would look essentially like this. Okay? So let's say it was $5,000 a month for rent and there'd be 60,000 apartments available. Well, we've got a little bit of a problem here, because if we look at that, and I'll kind of show you what all this means. If we brought it from $5,000 to $3,000 a month, we'd be going from 60,000 apartments supplied. So 60,000 would be equilibrium at $5,000 a month rent. But the government puts a price floor. We bring the price from here to 3,000. And that means only 35,000 apartments would be available. Some of you say, you can't make apartments disappear, but you can. Apartment owners in New York would, what they simply did is they took their apartment building, said, I can't get the rent I want, and they sold them as condos. There's a big shortage of apartments, so people really wanted condos, and a 1-bedroom, 900 square foot apartment in New York could go for like $1 million. So if they had a building with like 30 of those apartments, they get $30 million. And since that apartment owner would own the building, they could still charge them like community development fees and still get some money that way after making $30 million for selling those apartments as condos. So the amount of apartments would decrease. It really happened. So instead of there being 60,000 apartments, there's now about 35,000 apartments. So what this all means is this. At that lower price, though, consumers would demand 80,000 apartments. Okay, this is where it gets tricky. Consumers want 80,000 apartments, but producers are only making 35,000 apartments because the price is lower. Think, at low price, if I only had to pay 3,000 a month, I'd like to move to New York City. But instead, the problem is producers are saying, yeah, but I'm not getting enough money to do that. So at $3,000, I'm not going to rent out. There's fewer apartments available, which means if 35,000 people want a 1-bedroom apartment, I'm sorry, if 85,000 people want an apartment, but there's 35,000, that means you're going to have a 50,000 apartment shortage. So that's one of the first things you need to put. It's really A on number 5. The first thing that's going to happen is there will be a shortage. There's always a shortage when you put a price ceiling. That means that the first 35,000 people are going to say, I would like my apartment. And now all the apartments are filled. And you're going to have all these other people over here, this other 50,000 people, and they're all going to say, I'd like an apartment too. And apartment owners are going to say, well, we're all out. We already rented them all, and we don't have any more. So now you're going to have a bunch of people who want to move to New York, who would be willing to get an apartment, who would maybe even pay more than $3,000, but there's no apartments available for them. There's a shortage. They ran out. So that's the first thing we're going to cover in that one. So there's always going to be a shortage of apartments. So price ceiling can make a shortage of the goods that people want. Okay, the next part here is B, okay? In part B here, we have something that's a little different, okay? This is what happened in New York City during this time as well. So now all of a sudden, let's say I own a building. Okay, cool. I've got a building. It's got a bunch of apartments. I want to charge 5,000, but the market says no, 3,000. I go, ugh, I'm losing a lot of money on this one. So I rent it out and I've got a full apartment building. In fact, I've got a stack of applications to move into my apartments this tall. I got hundreds of thousands of people who want my apartments, but I'm full. Well, I don't get all the money coming in that I want, and I've got lots of people who want to move in. So what is something that I might do to kind of make up for this? Well, one thing I would do, and this is what a lot of business owners did in New York, is they let their apartment buildings rot, essentially. As in, you would live in my apartment building, and all of a sudden you go, hey, I've got a lot of rats and I've got tons of cockroaches everywhere. You would tell me I need to come and exterminate them. And I go, it costs me money, so no thanks. You're like, but I got all the bugs. I'm like, maybe it's your problem. I don't care. Maybe the furnace breaks in the winter. Oh, that would cost me a lot of money to fix or replace. So I won't. I'll just say you need to get a space heater, or we're working on it and take weeks or months or something. And so you're just living in this frigid apartment. Well, doesn't cost me money. Maybe you have a leak. Maybe appliances break. I don't really care. And here's what happens. Now you're living in this wretched apartment with moldy walls, with roaches, with rats, with broken heaters and furnaces and all. Well, you can either stay there and live with it, or you can move out. I don't care either way. You live, you pay rent, I'm okay. You move out, I'm okay too, because the day after you move out, the next day I'm going to have someone come in and fill that apartment. Because remember, I've got all these people wanting that cheap apartment. So I just go, okay, who's next on my list? You want the apartment? They're going to go, oh my gosh, yes, I don't care if it's bad. I just want to live there. So you move out, I get it filled. So I don't care if you're unhappy. I got someone else waiting because of that shortage. The other thing is, now where are you going to live? There's a shortage of apartments. You can't find one. And you might say, fine, I'll just pay more for a better one. There aren't better ones out there. We have a price ceiling. So there's not more expensive apartments available. They can't raise their rates. So now you have nowhere to go. So you probably would want to stay. And if you leave, I don't care. I'll just get a new person to move in. And that's what happened there. And that's kind of the answer for B. This caused the growth of slumlords, as in people who wouldn't manage or take care of their apartment at all because they didn't need to. There were shortages, and therefore the market was kind of in their hand. They could do whatever they wanted because people would keep moving into their buildings because the rent was so cheap. Okay, well, that's what happened here at B. It was the creation of slums and slum tenants where I just wouldn't spend any money maintaining my building. All right. A third thing happened there was C, because now you might have a different kind of building owner. So let's say I'm a building owner now, and I don't want my apartments to be bad. And in fact, I'd like to provide nice apartments, but I'm not getting enough money to, so I won't. But what's something else I could do? I can't raise their rent. Well, what I could do, and this is what some building members did, is they would start charging fees. Remember, I can't raise your rent, but fees are different. They act to you the same way as rent, but they still aren't rent. So I keep the rent at $3,000, and let's say I had no fees at first, but I'm going to charge you a $700 application fee. So you want to move my place, $700 just for me to look at your application. Maybe a $5,000 move-in fee. It's in you're desperate for an apartment, so you'll give me $5,000 up front just to move in. Maybe I charge you an extra $200 community fee and a $400 maintenance fee and a $150 heater fee and a $200 extermination fee. And I start adding those fees up. And even though your rent's the same, how much are you paying every month for your rent? Well, if we look back at our graph, if we're only renting out 35,000 units, consumers, that's our demand curve here, will be willing to pay up to $7,000 in rent. So I can start raising it from $3,000 and adding those fees, and I can even go above $5,000. Could go maybe to $6,000 or up to $7,000. So I could actually raise rents because of this shortage higher than the original equilibrium price. And this could create a different problem where I'm actually raising rents on people willing to pay all of those fees. So for part C there is some building owners, some landlords would charge very high fees that consumers would have to pay to live there. And it would bring the price, and this is a big thing for C, it would bring the price above equilibrium by adding all those fees. So my whole point was to bring prices down. But as I brought prices down, it made it harder for consumers to get an apartment. It then made some of the apartments horrible and disgusting and barely livable. And then 3, some other apartments kept being nice, but they charge prices above the equilibrium rate. And so you have a lot of problems with this about who's going to benefit from this and how. So let's go over this part here for 6. Who benefits and how do they benefit? Well, we can kind of look at the graph here. If we go back to our consumer and produce surplus, what you might notice is right in here, we have a little bit of an issue. The price now is right here. It's lower than our price equilibrium, which means consumers are now paying, and I'm just coloring this in really sloppy right here. Consumers are now able to take this part, and if you notice it was red, it was part of the producer surplus, and now they're able to gain that surplus because now they're paying $3,000 for something they might have paid $8,000, $6,000, even $5,000 for. So what that means is consumers are benefiting from this. They got that surplus right there. It's their surplus now. All right. So what you might want to put right here is who benefits and how do they benefit? Consumers benefit because they're paying lower rents for apartments. And I know if I get to pay lower prices, I get happy. I'm like, cool, lower prices as a consumer. I definitely not if I'm a producer. All right, another example is who loses from this and what do they lose? Ooh, that's a good one. Many people are going to lose. The first group that's going to lose, and you can see here, is right now, producers only have this triangle left. They used to have all this big area as surplus, but now it's just this triangle right here. So the first person is going to lose is producers because they get less money for what they're selling. So first thing, producers lose because they get less money from what they're selling. However, other ways can be lost too. As in some consumers will lose because they can't get an apartment no matter how much they want to pay because there's a shortage. So consumers lose because they could not get an apartment because there's a shortage, even if they're willing to pay more. The renters who live in slums, they're going to be very unhappy. And third, those who are paying more than the equilibrium due to being caught in an apartment that charges high fees. So while consumers get lower prices, producers lose more than they're gaining. And then you have these other unintended consequences like slums existing and higher fees that are above the equilibrium, making things even more expensive for renters. And you realize you're kind of stuck in a world where there's these people gaining, but this much loss. And we show that in the graph here by showing something called a deadweight loss. And what a deadweight loss is this triangle right here, which was consumers and producers gaining, now this triangle right here, since no one's getting this quantity of goods, this whole area is a deadweight loss. Since we're at this new quantity, all goods consumed here, it never those purchases never happen. As in, it's gain that has been totally lost. It's like if you and me were given $10 from someone, you would think we could split it 5 and 5. Economists would say that's perfectly efficient. $10 went to everyone. Or economists would also be okay if I gave you $6 and I only took 4, because it's still $10 of benefit. We don't play favorites. But a deadweight loss right here would essentially be, and what's happening this is consumers are gaining more than they lose. So it'd be like if we got $10, I give you $6. And then I go ahead and get $2, and the other $2 we light on fire and burn. So you get 6, so you're happy. I get 2, I'm very unhappy, and $2 are just don't exist. They're a pure deadweight loss. And that's what this part of the triangle represents, a pure deadweight loss. Now, to give you guys one more piece of information before you answer 8 essentially on your own is this. One item that we covered that had this price ceilings is price gouging laws. And what price gouging laws do is when there's an emergency, producers are not allowed to raise their prices. For example, a hurricane and gasoline. Now, a lot of people say price gouging laws are good. They protect us. They stop the producers from taking advantage of us and all those things. Well, what we'll get to on the other one is that's also like saying that gas is so cheap right now because there's an emergency. So consumers are taking advantage of producers. And you surely don't feel that way. But the same would be true during emergency when producers try to raise their price and consumers now all of a sudden feel that they're being taken advantage of. Let me talk about the consequences of these price gouging laws. One that's real and happened to me. It was probably about 15 years ago, and 3 hurricanes hit Florida. They all intersected in Kissimmee, which is where my grandfather lived. And he lived in a mobile home park for retirees. Well, they lost power, and they lost power for 2 weeks. So the day after the hurricane, my cousin and I rounded up a whole bunch of generators in Tampa because we were safe here in Tampa. And I loaded up my car and I drove all those generators to Kissimmee, giving it to my grandparents, some of their friends in their community, some other family members that lived in Orlando, trying to help them because without power, you don't have air conditioning. And remember, hurricanes hit in the summer where it's hot. And if you know that no air conditioning for retirees means they can die. That happened when Irma hit at some nursing homes. It was a big scandal because several people died because it got too hot. So those generators could be life-saving. And I brought them and I felt good about what happened, except they needed gas. Well, gasoline means with price gouging laws, you can't raise the price. So gas prices stayed low. And before the hurricane hit, everyone bought all the gas they could possibly get. So the gas stations ran out. The trucks stopped running for a couple days while the hurricane hit. Still no gasoline. So when I got there after the hurricane, I need gasoline to power that generator so my grandpa can have air conditioning or he might die. I wouldn't have paid $2, $3. I would have paid $5, $8, $10, $20 a gallon. I would have paid that without a problem. I drove around the whole area, going past Apopka, going all around Orlando looking for gasoline for hours, almost running out of gas myself looking for gas. I would have paid almost any amount to get gas for that generator to power my grandfather's home. The problem is there was a shortage. The price ceiling saying that you can't raise gas stopped me from getting it no matter how much I wanted to pay. So it was low because the prices kept low before, during, and after the hurricane. Everyone went, oh, cheap gas. I may as well buy some in case they run out. So everyone filled up the tanks in all their cars. They filled out gas cans that they may or may not use. And they bought all the gas because it was cheap. It was still $2.25 a gallon. Okay, so everyone bought the cheap gas and obviously it ran out. And so now people who wanted gas to leave or evacuate couldn't because they were running out. So they had to shelter in the way of the hurricane because they can't find gas to even leave. But some people with 3 cars in their driveway had 3 cars with full tanks, not going anywhere because, well, it's cheap gas. Why not get it? If those gas prices went to $5 or $6 or $7 or $8, a few things would have happened. One, people who wanted to fill up all 3 cars with gas wouldn't. They might fill up 1 car, knowing full well in a week or two, the gas trucks would be coming again, and the gas prices would be back to $2. So people would only buy what they need because it's not worth their money to fill up. Secondly, if the gas companies went ahead and could get $5, $6, $7 a gallon of gas, they would have had their trucks stationed and ready. When the hurricane went through, those trucks would have arrived probably within hours of the hurricane passing, filling up gas stations, knowing that they could get more money. They'd get $5, $6, $7 a gallon, but like in Alabama where there's no hurricane, they could only get $2.20. So why put gas in Alabama, bring it to Florida where people are demanding and needing it? And therefore, instead of it being $8 a gallon, it would probably fall very quickly to $7, $6, $5, $4, $3 a gallon. And then in a few weeks, everything would bounce back out and be at the $2.25 they left at. But that means everyone in Orlando who really needed gas, who found it important and were willing to pay, would have gotten the gas they needed. This is what I wish would have happened instead of those price gouging laws. That means like if you need batteries before a hurricane, they're going to sell out. You need canned food, they're going to sell out. If prices went up during those emergencies, people would prepare more and they'd also consume less of the good. They'd only get what they need instead of stocking up in case there was an emergency. And you can think about toilet paper right now. If they started doubling or tripling the price of toilet paper, those people who hoarded and bought, 10, 20 packets of it would have gone, wow, that's expensive. Why would I do that? So people could still get toilet paper if they needed it. But because of price gouging laws, for weeks and weeks and weeks, in fact, over a month, people can't get it no matter what they're willing to pay. And a higher price also encourages people to use and consume less. So you'd see people using bidets or not using as much toilet paper, they conserve it more. But the cheap prices means people don't value as much and they'll use and consume and hoard a lot of it because it makes financial sense. So that's the drawback of price gouging laws. You'll see it during hurricanes and emergencies saying report price gougers, get those people who are raising their prices, they're ruining everything. But really, if they let that go and let prices fluctuate more, that would actually cause more efficiency in the market and people consuming to proper numbers and proper amounts. Okay, so how do you fill in number 8? Well, that's something that you need to figure out how to fill in yourself. Number 8 says, do you think a price ceiling is a good idea or bad idea? Remember, in economics, we're not going how we feel. This is what does the data show you? As in, price ceilings have deadweight losses. We had slumlords. We had high fees that brought the price even above what you were trying to fix in the first place. With price gouging laws, yeah, consumers get lower prices, but producers get less money. They run out. People can't consume things no matter how bad they need it because of the shortage. So think about that and explain why you think so. You should be filling this box out and not just putting like, I think they're bad because reasons. Not a good answer. You won't get all your points. So fill this box out here about why do you think a price ceiling is a good idea or bad idea, and make sure you explain why. All right, guys, I'll see you on Wednesday when we do part 2, which is price floors. Till then.